Good morning. Well, here it is, Friday, May 15th, and can you believe it? We have 2 days in a row of sun shining, even just for a minute. It doesn't feel like we've had 2 days in a row quite like this, and the temperature is so nice. So as we begin our weekend, or maybe we could put it this way, as our week comes to an end, I would like for us to remember one thing. And I want us to remember this one thing, not just for today, but remember it for tomorrow. But also, remember it for June 7th. Remember it for June 7th. June 7th is a Sunday. And that is the day that our church will move from virtually meeting together in our homes to physically meeting together in our church building. And so what I'm about ready to say today, I want us to remember for that day. And not just for that day, but for the days that follow. So here it is. Remember this. God is giving us a wonderful opportunity. When it comes to June 7th and the days that follow, and it's not just June 7th, but being that we're thinking in view of that day that we're back together in our building and making plans and preparing for what that day is going to be like, I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be different. And I think there'll be a lot of rejoicing. I think it's going to be a time of renewal. I believe God has something wonderful for us. And so as we work our way up to that day, making plans, I think this should be part of our plans. I think this should be part of our plans, that God is giving us a wonderful opportunity. How so? Well, as you go throughout the New Testament, you find what are called one another statements. These are commands given to Christians. These are commands given to the local church. And these commands are for our relationships with other Christians. Specifically, these commands are for each local church. And in that local church, remember, you can't have a local church without people. A church is not a building. A church is not some inanimate object. A local church is people. The church is people. And so throughout the New Testament, there are these commands. They're great, wonderful, beautiful commands, precious commands. And they're simply called one another statements. They're typically just 3 words. And it's for guiding us and structuring and helping us in our relationships with one another within our local churches. And some famous one another statements, some obvious ones are like love one another, greet one another. I think that one actually says greet one another with a holy kiss. Well, how are we going to continue to greet one another in a time of social distancing? I doubt there's going to be some holy kissing, and there won't be some holy hugging or holy handshaking. There might be some holy elbow touching, but we're still going to greet one another, right? Serve one another is another one another statement. But the one another statement I like to focus on today, and that we remember for June 7th and the days following, and it's for the intervening time too, is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 33. Now, 1 Corinthians 11, 12, and 13 are a tremendous trilogy. Those 3 chapters go together. And 1 Corinthians, I think about this letter a lot. Remember, 1 Corinthians begins in the first few verses that Paul tells this local church, here's a reason for my writing. Chloe, one of your church members, has reached out to me and has told me something's not right. That there's divisions among you. There's tears within your local church. You're being torn apart. And he says, this ought not be so. There needs to be unity. So a purpose in his writing this letter is because of what he's hearing. And he says, as I hear it, without investigating any further, I tend to believe it because I know you. I know your tendency. I know who you are. And so 1 Corinthians 11, 12, and 13 come along. And these chapters specifically address the relationships we have with one another within our local church. And so 1 Corinthians 11, 12, and 13, all about that. But listen to verse 33. It's one of those one another statements. Now the context is communion. The context is the Lord's Supper. And big idea in that chapter is how we value, how we treat the Lord's Supper is related to how we treat one another. How we value the Lord's Supper is related to how we value one another. That if we're not getting along with each other, we have devalued the Lord's Supper, because the Lord's Supper, the Lord's table, brings us together. It is a unifying ordinance that we are to partake of regularly. We come to the table together. And so how we value the Lord's table, the Lord's Supper, how we value communion is related to how we value one another. And in verse 33, Paul gives this one another statement that, yes, is to be applied when we come to the Lord's table, but that's not the only time it's to be applied. It's to always be applied in everything we do with each other as a local church. Here it is, 1 Corinthians 11, verse 33. And he says, so then, my brothers, when you come together to eat, here it comes, wait for one another. And so that's what I would like for us to do as we prepare ourselves for that first Sunday back together, which is going to be different. Wait for one another. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, one example is some people just are not going to be comfortable coming back out and being together in groups, whether small groups or larger groups. Some people are not going to be comfortable with that. When I say some people, I mean some of our brothers and sisters, and that's okay. What do we do when it comes to some of our brothers and sisters who are just not just ready to leave their home and enter into this world and get back into physically being together in a local church? We wait for them. We don't criticize them. We don't complain about it. We just say, we'll wait for you. And then it goes further. A dear friend sent me an article the other day that I thought it addresses this whole what Paul's writing to the Corinthians about. I hear there's divisions among you, and this ought not be. And the person that wrote it from the perspective of all these restrictions and churches coming back together. It could become a divisive issue because there are probably two groups within every local church when it comes to getting back together. One group says there's nothing to worry about. These restrictions, that's what they are, but there's nothing to worry about. Then there's the other group that says we have to be cautious. Maybe to put it positively, you have one group that's very optimistic, saying we have nothing to be concerned about. Let's go back to just playing it safe and be sensible, but there's nothing to worry about. Let's go back to the way we did things, just keeping things in mind, wash your hands. And am I making a little bit of sense? So there's that group. And there's this group that's cautious. And so this wonderful article said, well, one, don't we need optimistic people? They're the ones that keep telling us there's a brighter future. We're heading in the right direction. There's a brighter future. We need optimistic people. We need in our churches people saying it's okay. There's not much to be concerned about. And yes, this virus is real. Yes, this virus is serious, but it's going to be okay. And we can still see each other. And let's just take the necessary precautions. So we need optimistic people, but we also need cautious people. We need cautious people to remind us of the dangers of things. And the cautious people, they're not operating out of fear. They're just trying to really make sure everyone stays safe. Not to say the optimistic people aren't trying to be safe. Don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. You need optimistic people that just say, it's going to be great. It's going to be fine. There's a brighter future. Then there's cautious people that say, okay, still though, it's good to have restrictions like no shaking hands. It's good to have restrictions like probably should wear the mask. It's good to have restrictions. And you need those people. And the danger, and I think it's just a danger we're susceptible to because one, we're sinners, and two, Satan hates us. And he's always looking for a crack. He's always looking for a way to drive the wedge even wider between us, looking for anything to upset our relationships. And we need to be careful that we don't let getting back together become a divisive thing instead of a celebratory thing. And so as we approach June 7th, we're going to be so glad for the optimistic people. And we're going to be so glad for the cautious people. And how does this fit? Wait for one another? Well, wait for one another. What does it do? Wait for one another says, I'm putting you above me. I'm putting your concerns above mine. I'm putting your interest above mine. And so that's why I call this, it's a wonderful opportunity God's giving us. I think it is to strengthen our relationships with each other and to say, I'm going to be sensitive to you. You're an optimistic person. I'm not, but I'm going to be sensitive and be thankful that you're an optimistic person. And then we look at the cautious people and say, well, I don't really share your caution, but I'm going to put your concern above mine, and I'm going to submit to your concern because I love you that much. And I respect you that much. And add this, because 1 Corinthians 12 teaches this. We need one another. You're cautious and I need you. Because you're going to help broaden my perspective. And that's what both groups do. The optimistic and the cautious, they help broaden our perspective. Because sometimes if we just focus on being optimistic, that's a very narrow perspective. And the same thing is true for the cautious. If we're just constantly cautious, that's a very narrow perspective. We need both, right? It broadens our perspectives. And we're both come together and they help each other move along. So this is just a great opportunity, a wonderful opportunity to experience how much I need you. I need optimistic people and I need cautious people. Because I think both help me travel along this road. Too much of either is not a good thing. We need both. And I think it fits. I hope you see that. It fits in wait for one another. What does that mean? Well, as I wait for you, I might be really hungry. But I'm not going to let my hunger be of a greater thought on my mind than you. Sometimes I do that, like when we go out to eat. And sometimes our friends, if we're meeting people that we're going to go out to eat with, maybe they can't eat until 7 o'clock. Me personally, I like to eat between 5 and 5:30. And the longer I wait to eat, what happens? I listen to my stomach a whole lot more. It's growling. I cannot wait to eat. Well, when I'm forced to wait, I'm putting my hunger aside because it's more important that I look forward to seeing the person I'm going to eat with. And when I don't do that, I put my stomach above that person. And so wait for one another. There's so many opportunities we have to apply that, not just at the Lord's Supper, but here's the instance where that's being presented is at the Lord's Supper. But we're to do it in all things. Wait for one another. And because it's an opportunity to put you above me, put your interests above mine, to put your concerns above mine. And I hope you walk away with this morning, today, remembering that we have a wonderful opportunity. And in this opportunity, we need optimistic people and we need cautious people. And I'm sharing these things because you know how Satan works. And I am concerned, not just for our own church, but every local church, of divisions that might arise during times like this and really pull people apart instead of bringing us together. And so we do need to be aware of what may divide. And because in something like this, what I think is right, the right decision, is not as important as you. And sometimes I need to put, in cases like this, I need to put aside those opinions for the sake of my relationship with you. And it's because together we do accomplish more, and we need each other. We need each other because the big purpose is the advancement of God's kingdom. The big purpose is the advancement of the gospel. And remember what Jesus said. He gave a one another statement. It was love one another. And he said this, in so doing, the world will know that you are my disciples. The way you treat each other, the way you wait for one another, the way you love one another, the world is going to know that you belong to me. And isn't that something greater to keep in view? That in this wonderful opportunity of how we value one another, we are saying to the world, this is how you know we belong to Jesus. And that gets me excited. And so I want to reiterate again, I think God has something great for us, something good to experience as we get back together. And there's things I was thinking about yesterday that I personally, as a pastor, could have done as I look back over the last 8 weeks. And I think we're all going to learn stuff like that. There's things we could have done. And it's good to have that kind of reflection. And we want to write them down and say, just in case this ever happens again, there's things we can do better, right? And why would we think that way? Well, because we love each other so much. And fellowship, physical, being together, fellowship is really important. And being together for worship physically is really important. And staying connected is really important. There's ways virtually to stay connected. And those are good. Those are good for the time being. But physically being together, there's nothing like it. And we look forward to that. And so I hope this morning, I hope I made a little bit of sense. And do you know how much I care for you? How much I enjoy being your friend and enjoy being your fellow worker. It's for our joy, and it's for our enjoyment together of the God who saved us and loves us and who is our Father. So happy Friday to you, and I can't wait to see you soon.